Welcome to Lawyer Boss Life.
Welcome. You're listening to Lawyer Boss Life, the podcast for law firm owners who want to work smarter and live better. I'm Alay, law firm business coach and growth expert.
And I'm Chelsea. I'm a law firm owner, entrepreneur, and toddler mom. I know it's possible to have an excellent income, work 40 hours a week, and take time off because that's what I do every day. Today, we're diving into systems that make scaling possible and how to build them without overwhelming yourself or your team. I'm putting an exclamation point on the end of team. Alay, we talk about systems all the time in so many different aspects of a law firm business. It's probably one of my favorite things to talk about, but you and I alone have talked about this for probably about 4 years now and how to use the right ones for your business.
Yeah, really, if you think about a law firm, it really is a collection of systems. So let's start off by what is a system, because there's so many different things. A system is basically a workflow. It's an example of it might be client intake or billing or reviewing work. It's just something that's done over and over again repeatedly, and it tends to be the same kind of thing. And really, a law firm is a collection of those systems driven by amazing people. The nice thing about systems is they keep your law firm working well, even when your team is having a bad day. So as you start to grow and scale and the volume of work goes up, you have more clients coming in, you have more bills going out, you have more review of work being done. Having systems reduces the likelihood that errors are going to happen. So they're really important for a law firm from a quality assurance standpoint. They're also really important from the owner freeing up their time, because as these things start to get systematized, meaning the team can do them over and over and over again without thinking about it so much, it actually frees up your time as the law firm owner, because those things can start to be on autopilot, which frees you up to do some other awesome things.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I think is really interesting when it comes to a system as a default is every firm operates so differently. So the systems I have in my business are not necessarily the same systems, although there may be some overlap that another firm has because of the way they operate, how their team is built, what the lawyer has their hands in versus their admin staff versus other outsourced vendors. And at the end of the day, I totally agree with you. It's really what are the tasks that are going to be performed over and over again on a daily basis that you can streamline. So not only does your team do them well and limit the amount of mistakes they're having, but also you can trickle that out to the next person that might take that role. And that's going to kind of lead me into the next thing I want to talk about, which is like the first 3 systems every small law firm should build early on. I'm kind of hinting at one of the ones I think should be included, which from my perspective is onboarding. This is both onboarding new employees and onboarding new clients. But this is the system that I feel like I waited way too long to really hash out. Do you see that with some of your clients?
Yes, and that's usually one of the first systems we tackle. We usually tackle 2.
Yeah.
One is client intake, and the other is new employee onboarding.
Right.
You got to come up with a third. It's probably billing. And those 3 systems together comprise a lot of the work that we do with our clients. And they're oftentimes not really in place. The law firm is getting the work done. They're bringing on new clients. They're billing clients. They're bringing on new employees. But every time they try and do it, and they do it, but every time they try and do it, it seems like they're almost reinventing the wheel. They have to go through the same process and do so many things from scratch every single time. If it feels to you as a law firm owner like there's a better way, you are absolutely right. There is a better way. So Chelsea, what was your journey like as you started to put these systems into place?
Yeah, I honestly can admit that while we had some kind of systems for intake and onboarding new employees, we really did not fine tune this system like earlier than last year. We brought on a new intake specialist who changed the way that our firm operates. And once we got in a system that is so just click and go when it comes to onboarding or client intake. The amount of time she spends bringing on a new client is so much more streamlined so that she has more time to talk to those new prospective clients that haven't yet quite come in. It's a one-click system. It's automated reminders, it's follow-ups. And it's so clear how much of an impact that had, because our retention rate and conversion rate of new clients is so much higher in the last year, because they go, yeah, I'd like to retain. And all of a sudden they have 4 emails of all the things that they need to do, clear organization of all they need to click. And it's kind of spoon fed to these new clients. They're more likely to be like, oh, this firm has it figured out. I don't have to think about it. On top of, you take that same approach into onboarding new staff, where you one click all their employment forms, all their employee handbook, their benefits, and they have that same experience. Like this firm is going to take care of me. Those two things we really, really narrowed down in the last year, and that's where we've seen our business take off and my time free up. So, I mean, I can't advocate more. I can, because
You're a fan.
I'm a huge fan of these two systems and what they did for our firm. And they're not even the billable issues. They're the non-billable issues. Those aren't the money makers. Those are the time freers.
Yeah, spot on. And it used to be that there were no shortcuts to this. In order to have a system that runs as well as yours does, Chelsea, the person would have to invest a lot of time. First of all, you have to write down everything you do. And then you have to figure out how to streamline it. And the last thing you do is you set up all the automation.
Yeah.
Things are different now because a lot of practice management systems come with templates for these systems that have automation built in. So curious, Chelsea, what was the approach that your firm took? Did you more adopt like off the shelf systems that you started to implement, or did you create your own from the ground up?
I would say we did a little bit of a hybrid, but we use Clio, and Clio Grow is their intake and kind of client lead management. And they essentially give you workflows that make your systems work. So you can tweak them for what works for your firm, both how you send out fee agreements, reminders that are sent, intake forms that are sent. But then there's some back-end systems that we follow through that are customized. So I'll give you a quick example, because I feel like this has really changed the way that we approach it, which is when somebody says they want to retain, they know exactly who to contact. It's our intake coordinator. It's the only person they've really talked to since, reaching out to our firm. A retainer agreement is sent from Clio Grow. A full, more detailed intake is sent from Clio Grow. Once those are all signed, a link for payment goes out. Once payment is received, my intake specialist emails them a confirming email saying we've received payment. We've received everything that we need. Here's our welcome handbook, which is just kind of our FYI about our firm. And then the associate gets notified, sends an intro letter for all the docs they have to collect. That's all automated. So within the first 24 hours of a client being retained, they've gotten contact from our intake specialist and an associate within the first 24 hours. Then from there, it's just all of our case management systems, which is a whole nother system we'll talk about at some point probably. But so just utilizing what Clio gave us all this information. So we didn't have to go out there and recreate it. Clio already did the work. And this is not like an ad for Clio. This is literally just my experience of how much work they've done to research what is helping lawyers get these things done. And we just click, check boxes of what we wanted. We didn't have to, but we did some back end with how we send out our welcome packets and intro emails. Those are a little bit more customized, but that's an internal system we're able to do much more streamlined because of Clio, the time it gives us back.
And were you able to do this just by interacting with Clio, or did you have to hire other consultants to get all this
this is
automation put in?
All Clio. It walks you through it. Their tutorials walk you through it completely about how to work their workflows. And our intake specialist did spend some time, watching some suggested videos. They have some great trainings. And we allowed this is another little key here to how to implement and know what systems you are going to work for you is we allowed our intake manager to essentially tell us, what do we need as this system? What specifics do we need? And she said, this is what I think we need. I don't think we need X, Y, and Z, even though they recommend it. I think we just need this, and this works for us. So sometimes your employees are going to help you create the systems. And sometimes, those systems need to be in place to best guide your employees to be more efficient. So, it really depends. And I actually think you brought this up, which is kind of the other big system that, Clio has helped us with, but also really streamline the efficiency of our firm, which is billing. And that's a place where, unlike letting your team drive that process and, tech drive that process, that is really where I think the law firm owners need to come in and get on top of a system, implement a policy, and have it be consistent, because billing is one of those things that can really be daunting for lawyers. And if you don't have a plan to tackle it, I've seen just so much time lost. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the conversations you've had with some of your clients about billing systems as well? Because I think that that's a huge one.
Yeah, it is a big one. And so many of the billing problems actually happen earlier on, in terms of, clients aren't set up to be billed sometimes.
Mhm.
They're having challenges with the trust account setup sometimes. The work needs to be written off and hasn't been written off. So there's a mad scramble to go do this. And every time it seems like with the firm, billing sneaks up on the firm, and then the firm shuts down for 2 days or whatever it is, while the attorney is reviewing all of the bills, writing down the time, and then getting those bills out the door. And then someone's got to do all the follow up to make sure all that payment happens. And oftentimes it just ends up being a huge challenge. What's cool is once they really get their arms around billing and it starts to run like an efficient, smooth process where there aren't as many choke points and hangups at the back end of it. What's really cool is clients say, you know what, instead of billing once a month, we're going to bill twice a month because now it's easy and we can collect the money that much sooner. Some clients have even gone from twice a month to once a week, which is really great from a cash flow perspective because money is just coming in consistently and it matches with the money that's going out, maybe even more so. So it's really advantageous to have that time investment in the billing system. And we talk a lot about Clio here because Chelsea, that's what you have in your firm, and most of my clients run Clio too, but not all of them. And you're going to be able to see if you have a good practice management system, most of them have this kind of workflow in the system. But the thing about it is you have to be willing to use it. So this is a little caveat to those perfectionist attorneys, and I know there's a few of you out there. What oftentimes happens is we get pushback from clients saying, well, I didn't implement, you know, the billing system because it didn't do everything that I did. It did like a 80% solution, but it didn't do the 100% solution that I wanted. And so I didn't do it. And so it's this idea of it's got to be perfect for our firm or we're not going to use it. And that is a real obstacle towards making progress. This is something that's going to be hard for some of you to kind of wrap your arms around and get comfortable with. But sometimes you need to change your process to accommodate the default process that the software already provides you because it's going to give you those efficiencies. It's going to give you that time back. It's going to give your team the ability to run with this stuff, and it's going to give your clients a better experience. But it only does that if you let it. And if you try and make it 100% perfect most of the time, it's not going to happen because perfect is the enemy of done. What have you seen, Chelsea, when you're implementing these things?
Yeah, I mean, there's always one or two things where I'm like, oh, I wish, we could change this setting, or I wish we could move this around. And we just can't. Sometimes I email those. Clio's actually really great. They have a great like service-based background where you can email them comments about things that you wish you'd see, and they'll respond and they'll note it. But like the more that lawyers do that, then they can start implementing these additional changes. But when it comes to billing systems, client intake, onboarding, new employees, all these little things that certain softwares are meant to do, their system works if you use it. times you, like you said, you have to be willing to change the way that you do it to take advantage of the system. And if there's something specific that you really need, you can find ways, like our team does, outside of that system to really, put the cherry on top for your clients or your firm. So I totally agree with that. And at the end of the day, a lot of this is about improving the client experience and also making your firm operate more efficiently, right? And so you have these clear processes in place for not only running your business more efficiently and making it easier on you to perform tasks, but also so the client has a better experience. So, like you were saying, and maybe some lawyers are a little bit more rigid than others, but if you're willing to kind of give up some of those things that you think are important, you may realize that those things really weren't being noticed by the client. At the end of the day, they want a system they can follow and understand. And a lot of these services, Clio, whatever service, data management or intake process you have, they just want to see the system play out, right? And I think that's one area where we really let go a lot in the last year or so. And it's been so much easier to see these systems play out and the clients benefit from it because they have a clear understanding about who to go to. So I totally agree. It's that rigidity of it all that can sometimes get in a lawyer's way with some of these systems for sure.
Yeah. And what has your client feedback been, if anything, from when you had the non-automated systems before to now that you have the automated systems? You said you've seen the retention rates go up. Have you gotten any other feedback from clients?
Yeah, interestingly enough, there's been two areas of feedback we get the most, and one of them doesn't seem related to the system, but I absolutely do believe it is a part of it. And we get more feedback based on our clients, our intake specialist, who is the first point of contact. Everybody just feels like they know exactly what to expect from her. Not only is she very articulate and cares a lot about clients, but when she says something on the phone, the clients see the system play out in the back end. So everything she's saying is exactly what they expect. And that's really refreshing. And we've gotten a lot of feedback on that. On top of clients, we used to get some questions and follow-ups like, oh, when will I hear about this? Or what's the next step? Now that is all dumped on them. And I say dumped for lack of a better term. It's not like we berate them with a bunch of emails, but they don't ever have to do that. They don't ever have to say, hey, I retained a week ago, haven't heard from anyone. That doesn't happen. And so that's more silent feedback that we've been giving. It's the lack of that we're seeing so much that really makes us feel good. And the more consistent we are with that, right, the more that I, as a business owner, can take a step back and not micromanage. Again, this goes to efficiency. And so it's having those conversations about what systems for your firm make sense, because that's what's going to drive really making sure that those systems are fine-tuned. And one thing I want to point out before we wrap up here is you have to figure out the systems that work for you, but also you can start with one. It's okay to start with one and focus and get that system down. Don't try to implement 5 systems at once and do an overhaul for your entire firm, because I know that can be when people are in that growth or fine tuning phase of their firm. And maybe, especially working with clients like you do, I feel like some of these things can feel like a lot at once. But we started with just client intake. We just focused on getting that one cleaned up. Then we moved to billing, fine tuning our billing practices and making sure we had that down. Then we had a system, but we went back and looked at it, calendaring, right? All these other systems that we can get into, but calendaring system. Then it was onboarding new employees. Then it was that we complete one at a time and be able to say, hey, I'm going to check this box and move on. Make that system work first. And I really do think that the consistency of that approach has benefited us substantially. Do you usually approach one system at a time with your clients, or do you say, hey, these are all the systems we need? How are we going to prioritize this?
We just go after it one at a time, and we usually start with client intake, right? That's the one that seems to make the most sense if there aren't systems in place, because the impact is immediate. Clients will see the change right away. So it's a huge win for clients and for growing your firm. The other thing about it is client intake is oftentimes an area where the attorney is definitely involved. And so getting them to automate that gets them out of that role a little bit and really frees up their time a lot. They don't have to send engagement letters. They don't have to do all the follow up and all the chasing. That can just be handled. And the other reason why we do it is that's typically built into a practice management software system already. And it's
Mhm.
built into it at a level that's way beyond what the attorney's firm is currently delivering to clients. So that one just makes the most sense to start with. One of the issues with client intake that you will see is not everyone wants this. Not every client wants everything done electronically. You will have some clients who want to come into the office, who want to sign a piece of paper,
Yeah.
who want to have calls, and that's totally okay. But what we're seeing more and more is now the expectation with a lot of clients is that you have that digital system available for them. Even if they don't want to use it, they know that it's there and they can use it if they want to. The reason they expect that is they're seeing it in other aspects of their life. If you
Right.
sign up for an app on your phone, you know how seamless that intake process can be. And that is a new expectation for doing business. So implementing a client intake system, if there isn't one already, just makes a ton of sense and it results in a lot of big wins. Once that's in place, then we can move on to the next one, which tends to be billing because that has a big dollar impact too. And we want to make sure that we're maximizing profit and cash flow to the extent that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to, what I commented on earlier. Some of these systems are not about the profitability and making money and immediately, right? They're about eliminating those stressors, the things where things can slip through the cracks, the non-billable things. But these are where time freedom comes up. And systems really do that, right? Some people, again, will go back to that word rigid, right? You systems can feel rigid and you can't get creative, but there's a lot of places in which you don't need to be creative as a lawyer. And these are where the systems come in place. Let the individual case management show itself. That's where you get to be creative for each client and handle things differently for each client. But intake, onboarding, billing, calendaring, all of these things should be set it and forget it. So this is one of the things that I think if you're not doing, get on it now. Either find a coach like Alay that's going to guide you through it, or sit down and talk to your team about what's working and what's not. For help mapping out the next phase of your firm, visit lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. If you know a lawyer who needs to hear this, share this episode with them today. And while you're here, like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment to help us reach more listeners like you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.